It's August the 10th. Let's read the Bible. Friends, welcome back to this year-long journey from Genesis to Revelation in just 1 year. I want to say thank you to those who have made the comments. I've been reading a lot of them lately, and reading them as part of these videos. It's partly my way of saying that when you write a comment, it not just encouraged me, but I'm quoting it or mentioning it here so you'll know that I actually am reading what you're writing. A number of you made comments about the reading of all those names, especially in the book of First Chronicles, which was several months ago. Somebody said, I am exhausted just listening to you say those names. Well, you should imagine how exhausting it was to try to read those names. And then someone else said, all these names have a meaning. Interesting. You were doing great with those names. I try to do the best I can. And then my friend says, I usually just skip and feel guilty that I skipped. Okay, truth be told, in all these years of reading the Bible, particularly these long list of names in places like First Chronicles, I have skipped them, yes, scanned them very, very quickly. But reading it does make you go a little bit slower. And it has been such a great blessing. Now, here we are. We're in the third cycle of the debate. Remember, Job's three friends came to, quote, comfort him. And as long as they kept their mouths shut, they did. And then when they opened their mouth, they just made things worse. The three of them, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, Zophar the Naamathite, all those were men from different communities in the region of Edom, which would be roughly east of the Dead Sea. Remember, the book of Job is a true book. It's not fiction. There really was a man named Job. There really was a land of Uz. It really did exist. There really was an Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. And whenever I read this, Bildad the Shuhite reminds me of the Bible trivia question, who's the shortest man in the Bible? Bildad the Shuhite. I don't know. That's kind of the level of humor that I live on. And so this has been 40 or 50 years since I heard that, but still I read his name and I think about it. Then Zophar the Naamathite. Remember, they're arguing that Job must have suffered all of these calamities as a personal judgment from God because of his sin. And if only he would get, quote, right with God, then suddenly his life would improve. And Job is arguing back that it is God who has done this to him, and that it is not because of his sin that this has happened to him. I mean, really, who's right here? Bildad and Eliphaz and Zophar, they are right that sin has consequences, and we suffer when we sin. So that part of it is very true. And it's also true, as Job is going to argue and is arguing, God is sovereign. He is the one with whom we have to do. But we're going to hear a little bit later from a fellow by the name of Elihu. We haven't met him yet, but we're going to in the next day or so. And he's going to point us in a different and I think better direction. So today we're going to read Job 24, 25, 26, and 27. This is chapter 24 is part of Job's answer to Eliphaz. And then Bildad's going to have something to say. Then we're going to get Job's answer to Bildad. So let's just see how the argument moves forward. Job 24. Why does the Almighty not reserve times for judgment? Why do those who know him never see his days? The wicked displace boundary markers. They steal a flock and provide pasture for it. They drive away the donkeys owned by the fatherless and take the widow's ox as collateral. They push the needy off the road. The poor of the land are forced into hiding like wild donkeys in the wilderness. The poor go out to their task of foraging for food. The desert provides nourishment for their children. They gather their fodder in the field and glean the vineyards of the wicked without clothing. They spend the night naked, having no covering against the cold. Drenched by mountain rains, they huddle against the rocks, shelterless. The fatherless infant is snatched from the breast. The nursing child of the poor is seized as collateral. Without clothing, they wander about naked. They carry sheaves but go hungry. They crush olives in their presses. They tread the wine presses but go thirsty. From the city, men groan the mortal. They the mortally wounded cry for help, yet God pays no attention to this crime. See, this is part of Job's argument back, because the three men, the friends, are saying God always judges sin. It's you sin, and here comes the judgment of God. And basically, part of Job's answer is, how is it then that these wicked men get away with wicked deeds? And it says God pays no attention to this crime. Back verse 13. The wicked are those who rebel against the light. They do not recognize its ways or stay in its paths. The murderer rises at dawn to kill the poor and needy, and by night he becomes a thief. The adulterer's eye watches for twilight, thinking, no eye will see me, and he covers his face. In the dark they break into houses. By day they lock themselves in, never experiencing the light, for the morning is like darkness to them. Surely they are familiar with the terrors of darkness. They float on the surface of the water. Their section of the land is cursed, so they never go to their vineyards. As dry ground and heat snatch away the melted snow, so Sheol steals those who have sinned. The womb forgets them. Worms feed on them. They are remembered no more. So injustice is broken like a tree. They prey on the childless woman who is unable to conceive, and do not deal kindly with the widow. Yet God gladdens away the mighty by his power. When he rises up, they have no assurance of life. He gives them a sense of security so they can rely on it, but his eyes watch over their ways. They are exalted for a moment, then gone. They are brought low and shrivel up like everything else. They wither like heads of grain. If this is not true, then who can prove me a liar and show that my speech is worthless? So now, chapter 25, Bildad is going to make his third speech. Then Bildad the Shuhite replied, dominion and dread belong to him, the one who establishes harmony in his heights. Can his troops be numbered? Does his light not shine on everyone? How can a human be justified before God? How can one born of woman be pure? If even the moon does not shine and the stars are not pure in his sight, how much less a human who is a maggot, a son of man who is a worm? It's almost like Bildad has run out of air or energy. This is a very short chapter, but he is just saying everybody is a sinner. That's very true. How can a man be justified before God? The answer is not by himself. How can one born of woman be pure? Not in himself. Only God can justify. Now, Bildad's not going to make that point, but his general little statement here is true. That nobody is pure in and of themselves. Nobody in and of themselves is justified before God. Now, watch this. Chapter 26, Job's reply to Bildad. Then Job answered, how you have helped the powerless and delivered the arm that is weak. How you have counseled the unwise and abundantly provided insight. With whom did you speak these words? Whose breath came out of your mouth? Get the sarcasm here. The departed spirits tremble beneath the water, and all that inhabit them. Sheol is naked before God, and Abaddon has no covering. He stretches the northern skies over empty space. He hangs the earth on nothing. By the way, that's an amazing scientific insight for 4,000 years ago, 2000 BC. He hangs the earth on nothing. He wraps up the water in his clouds, yet the clouds do not burst beneath its weight. He obscures the view of his throne, spreading his cloud over it. He laid out the horizon on the surface of the waters at the boundary between light and darkness. The pillars that hold up the sky tremble, astounded at his rebuke. By his power he stirred the sea, and by his understanding he crushed Rahab. By his breath the heavens gained their beauty. His hand pierced the fleeing serpent. These are but the fringes of his ways. How faint is the word we hear of him. Who can understand his mighty thunder? And that, of course, is a point that Job has come back to again and again and again. Who can understand his thunder? Who can trace his path through the sky? Who can figure out why God does what he does? A true mystery. Chapter 27. Job continued his discourse, saying, as God lives, who has deprived me of justice, and the Almighty who has made me bitter, As long as my breath is still in me and the breath of God remains in my nostrils, my lips will not speak unjustly and my tongue will not utter deceit. I will never affirm that you are right. I will maintain my integrity until I die. See, this is the real issue. The three friends looked at all of his suffering, said, you must be such a great sinner. And Job says, I may be angry against what God has done, and I may be mystified because of my suffering, but I will maintain my integrity until I die. I will cling, he says, verse 6, to my righteousness and never let it go. My conscience will not accuse me as long as I live. May my enemy be like the wicked and my opponent like the unjust. For what hope does the godless person have when he is cut off? When God takes away his life, will God hear his cry? When distress comes on him, will he delight in the Almighty? Will he call on God at all times? I will teach you about God's power. I will not conceal what the Almighty has planned. All of you have seen this for yourselves. Why do you keep up this empty talk? This is a wicked man's lot from God, the inheritance the ruthless receive from the Almighty. Even if his children increase, they are destined for the sword. His descendants will never have enough food. Those who survive him will be buried by the plague, yet their widows will not weep for them. Though he piles up silver like dust and heaps up fine clothing like clay, he may heap it up, but the righteous will wear it, and the innocent will divide up his silver. The house he built is like a moth's cocoon or a shelter set up by a watchman. He lies down wealthy, but will do so no more. When he opens his eyes, it is gone. Terrors overtake him like a flood. A storm wind sweeps him away at night. An east wind picks him up, and he is gone. It carries him away from his place. It blasts at him without mercy, while he flees desperately from its force. It claps its hand at him and scoffs at him from its place. Now let me just say, and it occurred to me just thinking about this as I was reading it for you. It's not that Job and his friends totally disagree. They don't. They both believe in the sovereignty of God. They both understand that the wicked are judged by God. The difference is that the friends have almost a mechanical view of it. Suffering equals judgment. Judgment comes because you sinned. So if you have lost your kids in some terrible accident or catastrophe, or if you find yourself scraping your sores with the pieces of pottery, you need only look in the mirror and say, it's your fault. You're the one who did this. And by the way, isn't it interesting? Satan, who shows up in the court of God at the beginning of the book, Satan doesn't figure at all in the argument inside the book. That discussion between God and Satan is not known by Job. In fact, as far as I can tell, Job never actually figures out what was going on in the courts of heaven. And neither the friends nor Job talk about Satan's part in all of this. God is sovereign. God is sovereign. The righteous will be rewarded eventually, and the wicked are going to suffer, if not in this life, certainly in the next life, for all eternity. That much is clear. But the how, the when, the wherefore of it all, as I read this book, I come away with an overwhelming sense of the mystery of God. How hard it is to trace out his hand in the events of daily life. If you're struggling to understand God's purpose, well, welcome to the human race. We all are. If you wonder why things have turned out the way they have for you or for your husband, your wife, your kids, your grandkids, if you wonder why you had all the plans and it suddenly things collapsed around you, it's perfectly fine to go to the Lord and ask the Lord questions. Job did that. What we can't do is demand answers, or we can demand them, but our God will answer in his own time, in his own way. And I think for the most part of the really difficult questions of life, most of them won't be answered until we finally stand before the Lord in heaven. And will we really understand then? What we will know then, we will know even as also we are known. and the mysteries will be revealed. And eventually, God will bring us to a place of complete peace and comfort and praise. And we will say, Lord, you always knew what was best. Between now and then, at least in this life, we're going to have questions. So go out and serve the Lord today. Don't let your questions keep you from serving God. Don't let your doubts and your worries and your fears keep you from rejoicing in this day. This is the day that the Lord has made. If you aren't where you thought you were going to be, maybe not where you wanted to be, your circumstances aren't exactly what you were hoping they would be right now. That's okay. God knows what he's doing. In the end, everything will be made right. Have a great day, folks. This is God's day. Trust him. Rejoice in this day. Come back tomorrow. We're going to go, we're going to go a little bit deeper. Tomorrow, we're going to go chapters 28, 29, and 30. And guess what? I believe we're about to meet somebody new. Well, you got to come back tomorrow and find out about all that. Go out and have a great day. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.